so it's freaking awesome. So last week, a Perl monitor on IRC told me, hey, I'm in Berlin, do you want to come over? I have some extra frequent flyer miles. I was like, yeah, all right, I want to come over. So I came over to Berlin, met some friends, some amazing things happened in the last couple days. And then I'm like, I'm going to go see Liz and Wendy. So I took a train over last night, and now I'm here tonight, and like, good God, my old roommate in Taiwan is just here, working here. Many of you have visited and stayed with and drank with all over the world, so I'm just really happy to be here. So I walk into the room, and Sawyer's like, Rita's not here, do you want to give a talk? And I'm like, really? All right. Sure. So I'm going to give a little talk. The last talk I gave was, this is kind of amazing too, in Salt Lake City. So this shirt is USA Cycling National Championships, and I race bikes. And for a 50-year-old, I guess I'm pretty good. So I went and raced the national championships. They were in Salt Lake City this year. The second part of this coincidence is I wrote my first Perl module in 2000 called Ingy.pm. Has anybody heard of that one? So Ingy.pm lets you write C inside your Perl code, and then it just makes it callable as if it were Perl code. And then people added, they're like, oh, let's try C++, let's try Java, let's try, we added 25 languages. And I haven't worked on it at all since 2002, but the community spawned off of its own, and it's been kept intact. And then so some new guy came along. I've been doing a lot more Perl this summer than I have in the last couple years. And so there's some new energy in the inline community. This guy wanted to come in, and so we started up Conda Inline on IRC, and we got the inline C++ guy in there, this new guy, and we've probably done over a dozen releases of inline modules this summer, and really got it into good shape. And so this inline C++ guy, who I've never met in my life, but I've seen him online for 5 years, I said, hey, you live in Salt Lake City, and I'm coming to do this bike race. We should meet up. And he's like, well, just come stay at my house. You can have the bottom floor. My mother-in-law and father-in-law live there sometimes, but they're out of town. So I went to Salt Lake City. Now we're best friends. You know, it's just how it works in Perl. It's great. And so it just happens that YAPC is in Salt Lake City next year, and this guy is one of the main organizers of it. It's just so weird. And also, he invited me to give a Salt Lake City talk. And so when I went there, I gave 12 lightning talks. And I'm not going to give 12 lightning talks to you, but I'll give you a couple quick lightning talks on some things that I've been working on and that you might find interesting. So the first one I wanted to show is this tool that I've actually been working on for the last couple of years now. Let's see, about a year and a half. And it's actually probably my most popular GitHub project. And it's called, ironically, git-hub. And it adds the hub subcommand to Git. So now all of GitHub is accessible through the Git command. So if I say GitHub user, say Gugad, then we can find out, oh, the Gugad lives in Amsterdam. Interesting, he works for booking. He has 292 followers. I wonder who they are. So we could say, okay, there's the first one. Okay, etc. Let's get it here. Let's see if I'm following.
Can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it?
Nope.
Okay, sorry. Oh yeah. Can anybody fix the projector? Or, I mean, it's going to be a constant problem. So I can definitely. You can read that, right? I'll just keep hitting Control L. It's not a problem. Sorry. Sometimes I forget my own things. So Gugad follows Ingy.net. use that command so often. Well, it's good that we both follow each other because, you know, we've lived together in roommates and whatnot. So, but the thing is, you know, God hasn't really been talking to me lately, so. Now, I'm just kidding, God. Everything is right in the universe once more. Just a slight disturbance in the universe. So this seems cute, but why would you want to use this instead of using the web interface? Maybe you just like working from the terminal, but so far I haven't shown you anything that's really that powerful. But it turns out there's some things that can be amazingly powerful. So let's see what Gugat's been working on. Okay, and I don't really care about all of them. I just want to see the most recent 5. Let me run it again for you. Okay, cool. So, a little AMS, Amsterdam subdirectory, and let's go ahead and clone one of these. So I can, instead of typing git clone the URL, I could actually say github repo acme boolean. What's wrong with boolean then? I'll have to find out. I'll have to clone it and find out. So this will give me the URL that then I can git clone, or I can just say github clone, this shorter version. Now if it was my own repo, and it knows this because the first time you use it, you answer 4 questions, one of which is your GitHub ID, and it puts that into your config. So it knows that I'm Ingy.net, so I could just leave the Ingy.net / off the front. You can also put in @ anywhere your own name is supposed to go into a command, and it'll complete it with that. Okay. So now, I've done that, but what if I wanted to get all 5? I can redo that for all 5, or I could do this. Check this out. So, let's delete that. GitHub repost. Let's do -r. So this is raw, and this just gives me the data without the numbers and the other stuff. And you can say minus counts. Well, let's see. GitHub -h will tell you what you can actually do. Let me make it a little. So those are the different command line options that you can use. So I say CR5, I get the same thing. Oh, sorry, it would be, darn it. Count, let's see, raw, count 5. There we go. Okay, so we got that. Now what if we pipe that into another GitHub command? Can you see where I'm going with this? GitHub clone. Now, I could write a bash thing that actually read each one of those and put it in there, or I can just put a minus here. GitHub will replace the minus in any command with the next line from standard in and as it loops over reading standard in. So, I assume you trust that it'll finish those. So, yeah, so we got 3 of them. I really want to see what acme boolean is all about. It doesn't even have a readme, that's awesome. Oh, we could actually do a pull request using the GitHub command to correct the spelling on totally wrong. Or maybe that's supposed to be though. So, okay, let's see if it actually has any pull requests already before we go ahead and do it. So now let's go into the acme boolean directory. Now if I say GitHub repo, not only does it, let's see what happens. It knows that I'm inside of GuGod's thing, Acme Boolean. So now, and if I was to say GitHub user, or anything that needed I would get information about GuGod, because now I'm in the context of GuGod rather than in an outside context. And this ends up being quite useful. If I want to star this project, I can just say GitHub star. And now if we say GitHub, should have done this before. I'll unstar it. So now it has 2 stars until I unstar it. Sorry, GuGod, I didn't really like it. It's competing with one of mine. Okay, now we're down to 1 star. Yay. Let's see. Let's see who started. I wonder if GuGod started. So he did. It's cheating, man. It's cheating. Okay. So you can do things like follow all of GuGod's followers with a single command. One thing my friend used it. He's like, I got subscribed to. It was a company that we worked for. They had 75 repos, and now he's on their watch list and getting all kinds of email he didn't want to get. So he just said, GitHub repos for that organization with -raw, pipe it into GitHub on watch, and within 10 seconds he was not being spammed anymore, released from that avenue. Okay, so now that you guys have a good feeling of what GitHub can do for you, I want to actually show you the code. I have a couple of Git commands that I'm working on. A submodule replacement called subrepo, but I won't talk about that now. Let's go look at this. Okay. So, what's going on here? Well, let me show you the code. Anybody recognize the language? It's the famous language of the week. So,
fixed it?
yeah, sure. So when I started looking at Git commands, I noticed that this guy had written it in Bash, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I like programming in a lot of languages, and so I'll give it a try, but as soon as it lets me down, I'm out of here, and I'll go do it in Perl or something else. And I was able to let it not ever let me down. And so, I started setting my expectations higher and higher. So let's do something here. Let's say make test. Ooh, that looks kind of like. Kind of looks like Perl. What?
Well, dash door test?
Yeah, let's try prove.
You don't see it. Control L.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Thank you.
Wow, it looks a lot like Perl. Maybe these tests are actually written in Perl. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's take one command.t. Is that Perl? No, that's Bash. So, did somebody port test more and implement a use statement in Bash? Let's take a look. So, instead of making these submodules, because they're not really anywhere to get the Bash stuff, I started putting other things. So I wrote something called Bash Plus that gives you use and die and a few other nice things. You can actually, Bash can actually use, but it can't import when it uses. So I wanted that part. I wanted a full Perl use. And it also can't look for multiple names. You can't say foo/bar to source something. But when you do source something, it actually does look it up in path. And it doesn't have to be executable even. Anything in path that's in the, you can source. And so I just made it a little better. So let's cd2 and of course this has its own set of tests. Blah, blah, blah. And So let me show you. Now these directories are actually sub-repos, which is using this other git command that I wrote. And it's kind of like subtree. Has anybody heard of git subtree? It's kind of an alternative to submodules that actually includes the history. And it just really has a bad user experience and does a lot of things wrong. So I decided to fix all of those things, and I call it subrepo. You can check out git subrepo. So if I say GitHub repo here, okay. So we can see this is actually my biggest project. It has 178 stars, whatever. And something terrible happened, and you should all know about this. A few weeks ago, I was working on the tests, and I was working on the delete tests, and I made a mistake, and it deleted itself when I ran the tests from GitHub. And you're thinking, oh, well, it's no big deal. The code's still anything. It just creates. No, you can't, because think about it. You have 178 stars. You have over 100. Let's see, GitHub issues. So I have 100 and some issues. I can't get all that back if they're gone forever, right? And it turns out they're not. When this happens to you, you can take it from me. You just go to the support thing and do that annoying little box where you send a little tweet to them and pray that they do something. And that's one thing that they can do pretty well. Within an hour, you can get your repo back fully restored. So it's really good to know. But I did actually so all of the commands for this thing are I split them into little plugins. So let's go look at the repo plugin. So the repos command that I used, it's basically all of these lines. That's all it takes to implement. I refactored the code so that it could do these things that I was doing over and over again in a very efficient manner. You can see up here is a list of the fields that I want to print for each repo, etc. The repo, you can see here are the fields that I want to print for that. So let's look for delete. I added a little line of code. If the owner repo happens to equal Ingy.net GitHub, don't delete it, and say the commit message was something like suicide is not an option. So hopefully that'll never happen again. And as I thought about it, this was something that, I mean, it doesn't prompt you whether you really want to delete something, but I thought of it, I mean, that would get annoying from the other hand if you know, it's like then you could add an environment variable, type in a really long string, you know, it's just like, make it simple, keep it real, you know, guns are good or bad, you know, just you use them right or wrong or whatever, so, but definitely I never want to delete this one, so I thought that was just safe enough. Okay, so what I wanted to show you for this repo command was the -O flag. So in addition, this is going to show me the JSON I get back. So when I first wrote this, I did some hack that parsed the values I wanted out of the JSON, but I'm like, that's not really cool. I mean, if I'm going to do this all right, I need a real JSON parser. So now, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to implement one. So I wrote a full JSON bash thing with test using the port of test more from Perl to this. And
do you have a bash access backend to this?
well, that's a very good question. Now, remember that question because
You got
it had serious. I did this. So let me show you the actual parser. It's these are the regexes that get put together for the lexer, and then the parse is just parse an object, an array, or a value, and everything else is just about. I had a little API for actually getting values out. Now the interesting thing about this is that Git doesn't have, Bash doesn't have a model internally that stores hashes and arrays the way you would want to in JSON. But I found a trick that somebody else did, and I stole the idea and improved it a little. And I can show it to you. If I add the -J flag here, this will show you the JSON after it's parsed. So it gets parsed to one long string, which is a set of lines. And it's the key path separated by a tab, separated by the value. So you can't actually get an array by saying, something that points to an array, but you can get to every endpoint in the JSON thing, and that's what I wanted out of this data, so it works well for this use case. And then I have a JSON get function that just, basically greps out the value. Now it turned out, let me show you, if I say repos and I say -a for all, now before you saw this clunky pager, when it put up a page I said, there was a reason for that, because you have a rate limit, and if you actually do a big operation, I don't want to blow out that rate limit when you didn't really want it. But if you say -all, it will go and get all of them, and then anytime a screen is longer than a page, it will put you into a pager for any of the operations within GitHub. So we can see that I have all these things. Now, the most that it will get for any one packet is 100. So let's see what happens if I do -c 100, and then I do a -j. It's a lot of fucking data. Blah, blah, blah. We're only on 94, right? It's going to go all the way back to 1. So I had to do one optimization in all this. And what language did I do that in? What's the second most common language on every machine in the world? Perl. You got it. So that was my excess optimization. It will look for it will look to see actually when you're setting up and suggest that you use Perl if you have a JSON module that's appropriate. And that's what's actually parsing the JSON here, not the bash thing. But the bash is capable of parsing the JSON. I want to show you one more interesting thing. I think it's interesting. So, I'll show you we just got bash command completion. So if I say GitHub tab, those are all the commands. If I say GitHub help -all, it will list all the commands and their basic usage. And if I say GitHub help, say repo, I can't tab complete that. Oh, maybe I can. Did I add that? Don't remember. It will give me the basics for repo. Now, if I actually say GitHub repo and some bogus arguments, it'll say those are bogus arguments. Here's the actual usage. So I have a usage for each command, and I can also say man. Well, let me see. I can say GitHub help. It's supposed to put me in a pager. I'm sorry. Git help hub is slightly different. So this will put me in a pager. It's just a man page viewer, right? Or I can say man git -hub, same thing. Now, all of this doc in many places comes from one source, and I'm going to show it to you. It used to be written in Markdown, or actually ASCII doc, but this summer I invented a new markup language, and I'm going to try to explain why. But first, what I want to show you is it's pretty close to Markdown. But here's a part where it's different. It allows you to do, who's familiar with the 3 equals items constructs in pod? There's numbered lists, ordered lists, and what else? Nobody?
Wait, what was that again? Sorry?
In pod, you can say equals item after you say equals over and everything. And you're doing a list.
Yeah.
You can do numbered lists, you can do bulleted lists, or
In this back of the message.
you can do data lists. You can say equals item term, and then the next paragraph is the definition of the term, and that will be put into a data list, DLDD, DT,
Oh, yeah.
and HTML, and it looks beautiful. In fact, check this out. GitHub open actually starts a browser of your choice, and if I look at the README, okay, so this is the README that got generated from the swim. But what it actually did was the swim generated pod, and I published this as readme.pod. That's because GitHub doesn't support swim, obviously.
Yeah.
Yet, hopefully. And actually, this is a really funny story. So it was originally called QUIM, and I own QUIM.org, Kwim. It has two meanings. It stands for Know What I Mean, and it also stands for Quickie Markup. Does anybody remember Quickie from 10 years ago? The wiki that I wrote? And then I worked for Social Text for 8 years, and so I had this kind of love with wiki languages and markups. Well, it turns out, in the Queen's English, that QUIM means something not... Karen, can you maybe elaborate on... or any other Brit in the audience? Or I don't know if you're a Brit. But it's all very complicated with Northern Ireland. It's spelled Quim. Does that ring a bell? It means the Queen's parts that you don't talk about. It's
I think you got trolled by British.
So several Brits told me, you really don't want this name. And then GitHub had these troubles this summer, gender-related troubles, and I was like, you're right, I gotta change the name. So I thought about it for a while and changed the name to Swim. And now I don't. If anybody wants Quim.org, it's up for the taking. Now I have swimtext.org. So, okay. So let me show you those. This is what lists look like that are item lists. So they're not numbered, they're not bulleted, they're data definitions. And they look really beautiful. And this is the way that you should doc methods and that kind of thing. Markdown has no support for them. Pod has excellent support for lots of things in HTML, but it's shit to write. And you probably don't know about this because you don't even like writing lists. Like usually, if you have to write a bulleted list, you're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna make it a code block. It just indents a few spaces and just say start, you'll get it, you'll understand it, I can't be bothered to do this. Well now, you don't have to be bothered because you can do it the right way in Swim, have it produce let's look at, go back here and actually the README, which was generated right from that Swim doc. You can see that it was generated because it says that it was generated here. Let's get back to that. So this is a bulleted list. That's how you do a bulleted list. But this is a data list. See, Vim knows about it. It highlights it correctly. There's no way you would go through all the trouble to write this pod by hand. You would just say, fuck it. But you don't have to anymore. You can write it in Swim. Okay. Let me cut over 1 second before I talk. I want to talk about CPAN Day. Is anybody aware of my little CPAN Day exploits? Okay. Well, I was asking Neil Bowers. I kind of got sucked into this whole release once a day thing for the summer and try to get my continuous GitHub numbers up. And when I was in Salt Lake City, I blew both of them just one day, not paying attention. And I'm like, oh damn it! I missed it by 15 minutes. And I was like, all right, forget it. That was wasting my time anyway. But before that, on CPAN Day, I was still into it, and I asked Neil B., who's Neil Bowers, who does the report of who's the rankings of all these authors and stuff like that. What's the most anybody's ever released in a day? And he's like, oh, well, 150 when B.D. Foy was giving a CPAN class and everybody released stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but that's worldwide, you mean, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, one person. What's the most one person's ever released in one day? And he's like, let me do some math. So he does some database math, and he's like, it looks like it's 42. And 3 people are tied for second place at 41, and it turned out to be me, Ether, and somebody else. And then 42 was 6 years ago. So, and then CPAN Day was coming up, and he's like, Neil B. was like, hey, why don't you do a 21 gun salute? Because I was releasing sometimes, 40 modules a day, because I came up with this thing called Zilla Dist, which was just to kind of, dig at Distilla. That's actually a wrapper around Distilla, and the idea is that I write everything the way I want it to. So that's why I have directions called test and not T and all that kind of stuff. I've done this with all my Perl modules. I changed all the doc over to Swim. I changed all the test. I changed all the top level names to the names that I think are modern rather than these Perl antiquated things. And then I run, when I release it, it generates a subdirectory called CPAN. And under CPAN is the way Distilla wants it. And then Distilla takes charge and says, okay, I can make a build out of that. And so it's if you don't like something, just abstract over it. That's how this stuff goes. So, but it allowed, I had 175 modules that I've released to CPAN over the years, and it allowed me to get so far up to 80 or so have been released this summer and brought up to modern standards. So I think in the end it was a service, even if it's doing things differently. All of these things, and when you use it from CPAN, you don't ever even know, unless you look closely, that anything was generated differently. It looks like a normal CPAN module. I didn't, just because I do stuff cooler doesn't mean I'm going to inflict it on you guys. You can still do stuff the hard way. That's fine. So Neil said, can you just do a 21 gun salute on CPAN day? And I'm like, oh, you mean release 21 modules? I'm like, that sounds kind of pathetic. I'm like, so I thought about it, and I'm like, I'll release 21 in the first minute. How do I do that? It's kind of tough. So I could have them all ready to go. And I'm like, no, I'll set a timer so it'll do all the steps of a release and then pause until the right second. And I set them to go off every 2 seconds. I actually started 3 seconds before CPAN day, so I make sure that I was like, didn't get seconds, because there's a little bit of network lag and whatnot. So, and then I made this thing called Massive Attack. It's part of Zilla dist. And basically what is this? It's a little bash script that will look for a certain situation in any 175 line, or the 80 that had been converted to Zilla dist. It'll look for something that I wanted to change, and it's kind of prevalent in all my modules for some condition. And then it will put me into a shell for that directory. If that problem exists, I can fix it up, type in make release, wait for it to release, and go on to the next one. So I didn't automate all of this, but it's hard to say. It's not like I just did this and I stepped away and 316 modules got released. That was my number. I was actually doing this constantly for 24 hours, except for the 4 hours that I slept that night, but I'm like, I really want something to go out every hour, so I did this timing thing so that I would release once every half an hour for the next 10 half hours, so then I could actually go get a little bit of sleep and wake up and continue on. And I wasn't sure how, I was shooting for 500, but I ended up with just over 300. And people asked me if I was going to do it the next year. It's like you do these things, and then people are like, oh, Ingy's going to get naked. No, I'm not going to. But that was 2008. Come on, guys. You don't do the same trick over every year.
You can drink it again.
Okay, I did. Yeah, no, I did get naked. 3 times that during talks. So yeah, I won't do that again, but it was kind of fun. So back to this. Okay, so that help document, the swim, gets chopped up into these little bash functions. So I don't actually, there's no duplication in any of the documentation. Let's take a look at this. I just go through the swim and smartly parse it out with Perl. I mean, all of the stuff that's automated from my side, the author side, is all Perl, but I really wanted to try doing something in Bash because Bash is on all the machines, and it was kind of a challenge too. If you ever want to learn a new programming language, it's simple. You just think, how do I do this in Perl? And then you think of each idiom, and you Google it, and you end up on a Stack Overflow page, and if you just stick with it, within 12 hours you know a new language. Let me show you what I mean. I didn't even remember to talk about this, but so...
Well,
What?
nothing.
Okay. So I'm interested in generating everything, including all of my Perl. So, now that I have the Zilla dist, I can actually code in the language of my choice. Right now I'm coding in the documentation format of my choice and having it convert to pod. Why couldn't I code in the language of my choice and have it convert to Perl before it goes out to CPAN? So I don't actually have to look at Perl, but you guys still all get Perl and it works better. And there's actually some advantages to that, because if the compiler's smart, I could say, oh, compile this securely, compile this to be slow but robust, compile this to be fast, but all kinds of different things you could do. Or like you could take the current best practices of the day and say, recompile this with the current best practices. And I've had this idea for years, and I've been giving talks about it for years, and it's not really any closer to being done, but it might get done. So a few weeks ago, I wanted to make when I was in Utah actually, I wanted just a little program that exercised all of the regular things that you do in programming. So what do you do in programming? You have a module, you import the module, or use the module. You have if statements, you have loops, you have variables, you have assignment, you have regexes, you have interpolation, all these simple little things. And so I came up with the idea of having a Pig Latin object-oriented module where you could instantiate, it's really kind of contrived a bit, but you instantiate a Pig Latin object with an English string, and then you call the convert method on that, and it returns the Pig Latin of that. Now check this out. I'm going to say make test here. That's 16 or 17 different languages. Scala has the compile to Java run, and it passes all of them. Let's see what we got. We have Bash, C++, CoffeeScript, Go, Ingy, which is my new language. It doesn't exist yet, so it didn't run. LiveScript, which is Audrey Tang's favorite language these days. That's a JavaScript. It's a functional JavaScript variant, if you haven't seen it. Node.js, Perl 5. David Oswald did the inline C++. That was my Utah friend. Perl 6, of course. PHP, Python, Python 3. And then somebody contributed a racket and Scala. I haven't learned those languages, but I did take the time to learn Go and Tickle because one of my friends that works at actually two of my friends that worked at ActiveState are the only two Tickle developers left on the entire planet. But it's not a bad language, actually. So pick a language. I mean, let's look at the Perl 5. So all of the tests kind of look like this. They say, they alter the path so it knows where to find Pig Latin. I turn on future say so it could look modern for Perl. And then I instantiate a new object with an English string and I call convert on it and I say it. Let's pick another one, say Go. Kind of the same thing, except Go really forces you to be verbose and gross. It's I think it's a good language. It's like Python, a good language to maybe maintain, but terrible to write in. Let's look at Tickle. Okay, it's pretty nice actually, right? Not too bad. So now let's look at the real meat of it. Now, let's look at Bash. Yeah, why not? Okay, so this is Bash. I actually did object-oriented Bash. Does anybody know what this does in Bash? The dot and the colon. They don't do anything, that's the name. It's just, this is the whole name. So, when you make a class with these arguments, it will generate, and let's look at the Perl 6. Perl 6 is quite nice. You define an attribute. That's one of the things that they all do. You define a method. You have they all try to do, if they can, an iterator, a mapping iterator type of lambda thing. So you have a function that you're passing an array to and getting another function. They all do regexes. And so it's a pretty cool thing to go and look through and see how these different languages look. I want to show you one, actually I want to show you the best language of all of them though. So the thing about Ingy is it doesn't have a syntax at all. It's only defined in memory. But it has everything that you need in the Ingy version of this program, and I did actually write a Ingy version. So how would I write it? Well, if it's in memory, I can write it in YAML, right? So that's what I did. I wrote it in .ly.yaml. So, and so that's all of the information, I think, that's needed to generate all of the others. And any syntax that compiles into this is a valid syntax for Ingy. And I have one that I call CafeScript. So, So, and there's no Vim highlighter for it yet, because it doesn't exist. But I went through, actually, let's make this font down a little bit. Can everybody still read that? Pretty much. So if you took away this comment block up at the top, it's actually CoffeeScript. So this is a backslash defines a function, and you can see here's another function here where I'm mapping. At sign, like in Ruby, who's programmed in Ruby? You probably have to do that here at Booking a little bit sometimes now, right? Do people do? There's more languages than Perl going. Well, where am I? So small. Okay. So at sign means this in Ruby. So if you wanted to get $self.English, you would say at sign English in Ruby. And in CoffeeScript, because CoffeeScript took it from Ruby because it was a good idea. And so if you look at all of these, for sure, Cafe is the most succinct. But of course, it's also the least operational so far. But it shouldn't take much to actually write a parser for this into the Ingy thing. And are there any questions?
I have a question about the Perl 6 code, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to look at it?
Well, I'm wondering why you're using a variable at all.
Okay, let me explain something about this. All of this code is intended to be generated, not intended to be written the way the best Perl 6 programmer would write it.
Well,
It's supposed to be idiom for idiom. Same. Now, you're thinking to yourself, well, I would never code Perl 6 or insert Scala, my favorite language. Is it still your favorite language? Okay. I would never code this way. Well, the whole point of Ingy or CafeScript is really, because I'm a module guy. I release 316 modules a day, motherfuckers. So, and I want to do that in every language 316 times a day. So that's why I'm building up this tool chain. Because if I can get the tests single sourced, and if I can get the doc single sourced, and the metadata single sourced, and the code single sourced, then I literally can upload to everybody's CPAN with one make release. That's kind of the crazy goal. And yeah, it's all programming for fun, obviously, but so did that answer your question on Perl 6, or you're saying I could do it better?
If you talk about generating, I mean, if you just remove my big Latin words equals at the beginning, and just add dot join space at the end.
No, for sure. You could tighten this up. I actually, it is bogus that I'm doing this, and then a lot of the languages you could make it even cleaner than you could make it in Perl 6, I think. Like you could just put a join here. But I couldn't come up with a really good example. That there was some idiom that I needed to exercise that didn't work out if I didn't do it that way. And so, and they all look like this, and it's just supposed to, I'm trying to get as many idioms into as tight a piece of code as I can. And so a little bit of it has to be forced. I could show you something about Perl 6 that, this is real. I edited this, and I added the comment that this is the shortest FizzBuzz to date. Because some moron said, oh, in really concise Perl, and then they wrote this. That's not concise. What kind of golfer would put a semicolon at the end of one line? So, and I went through the whole page, and it turns out, I'll blow it up for, sorry. So there it is. It's 64 characters long. I couldn't get it any shorter. It's a brilliant algorithm, and it really makes me think, as I studied this, that Perl 6 is FizzBuzz guided coding, or language. I mean, there are operators in here that you wouldn't use anywhere except in this FizzBuzz to make it 1 byte shorter. For example, at first I thought this was just a modulo operation, but what it really is, this saying is $_, the current number, divisible by 3. Return a Boolean, true or false. Okay, you're going to multiply by a Boolean, now cast it to a number, 0 or 1. So what this code is doing is saying print fizz or buzz 0 or 1 times, depending on whether it's divisible by 3. Concatenate it, worst concatenation operator ever. Sorry, just have to go bust on it a little bit. And then print buzz 0 or 1 times, depending on whether it's divisible by 5. And then that whole thing is an expression, and sometimes I even think the precedence is fizz buzz guided precedence, I don't know, because there's no parens in here. Or, if neither, print $_. It's brilliant. But also, so I made it even more brilliant. I took it to 30 characters. Is that, what did I say? This was 42 characters, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, I said 64, but it's not. It's 44. Whatever 64 was, this Python guy was sitting next to me and I was showing him all this and he's like, I want to see how short I can get it in Python. And we actually got it pretty short for Python, which is a terribly verbose language. In the small, you can't golf Python very well at all. But he did a really great job. And we stole some ideas from Perl 6. So let me show you this. If I can remember where I put this thing. Okay, so this is my take on it. This is cafe script at the top here. These are just some notes. This is more verbose cafe script, so you can understand how it actually works down here. So this is, I think, 30 currently.
I think those are live scripts.
What's that?
I think those are live scripts, not copy scripts.
No, this is cafe script. Live script isn't even as short. The live script says, they have a blog post saying, can anybody do a FizzBuzz in shorter than this? You've seen that, right? I still haven't put a comment in to say, you guys are way behind. Take a look at Perl 6, and then as soon as I get a cafe script good enough to parse this, I'm going to be the winner. So this is saying take 1 through 100, and then since you have a range followed by a function, I conjectured what else could it do except pass each part of the range to the function. So no reason to put anything between that and the function start. And then say, if you have a greater than symbol at the beginning of a statement, it obviously means say, right? Now, LiveScript, that language Gugad was just talking about, they have a thing where if you put slash in front of a word, it's really the same as quoting the word, which I think looks horrible. But I was like, but it's a good idea for golfing a FizzBuzz, so why not I'll make minus, if it's followed by a word, be quoting for that word. Minus otherwise just means underscore, so in this case it means $_. And times, not x, and plus, like any other normal language, not tilde, means concatenation. So it's the same algorithm that I stole from Perl 6, but I just made all the operators shorter and cheated, and there you go. That's the spoils of cheating before you. Any other questions? Hey, I got a question for you guys. I want to get some, what do they call it? I want to increase the amount of alcohol and THC in my system. Where do I do these things? Take me to your local bar, please.
Amsterdam's a dry town, you know that?
Really? We all get to drive separate
Happened just
cars?
while you were gone.
Thank you.